Hello and welcome to another episode of the GCSUNScast. It's episode 48 and we continue our crystal ball discussions from last week. My name is Shane, your host. Joining me is Tom on the line. Welcome back to the show, Tom.
Yeah, g'day Shane. How's your week been?
Ups and downs. But we're here to talk about footy, not about my personal life. There's no need to go into personal life stuff. I'm very open. I'm a very open person, happy to talk about things, but let's keep it on track. We always seem to run out of time.
We'll crash on through.
Yeah. I see what you did there. All right. So we want to thank our Patreon donors for helping us through with the show. Every week, this show is brought to you by our Patreon donors, Old Soul, Jack's Dad, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, Chris Moore, James Wood, and new recruit Tony. So one of the features of Patreon is something all of our listeners will get the benefit of, as it's only next week, Tom, that we have a full-scale rundown of what the GCSUNScast could possibly be. So next week we've got our normal Tuesday night episode. We will have a Thursday night episode to discuss selections. And then on the Sunday, the Gold Coast Suns vs Hawks game will be a live commentary from Tom and myself. So if you get sick of the biased Victorian commentating, which sounds like it's going to be the Hawthorn show with Jared Ruffhead and all the love for the Hawthorn players, well, tune in to us live on, you can find the link through our Facebook page and hear from a Suns point of view. Now, I can't guarantee we'll be as good as the TV commentators, but we'll certainly have some good discussions, interact with the fans through the live chat, and hopefully something worth tuning into. Well, Tom, let's get stuck into the news for this week. Not too much news coming from the club. Probably the biggest news is the signing of a new AFLW player, Taylor Thorne.
Good to see we're still signing players on. Of course, we've got the draft coming up. Now, for those who don't realise, the draft for the AFLW is actually concurrent with the men's draft. So it's going to be a really busy couple of days for the Suns recruitment staff. But getting a priority signing in like this one at this stage really sets our list up. I think we're up to over 20 players, aren't we, Shane?
Yeah, the list is growing quite rapidly. It's going to be interesting the way the team lines up next year, and we've seen glimpses of these girls or women playing throughout the winter series that we've just completed. Taylor Thorne was one of those that played in 2 of the winter series games. Now, she's a mid-sized defender. Apparently she can play on both smalls and talls, so a nice range there. And she has played 5 games in 2017 for Adelaide. Now, did Adelaide win the premiership that year?
They did. I'm not sure if she's in the team, in the grand final team. I did follow the AFLW reasonably closely, but obviously as the things came to the pointy end, the AFL men's competition was starting up, so I didn't even watch the grand final in the end. But Adelaide is a great program. I guess the thing with Adelaide is that when they first started out, they didn't have enough players, and they decided not to have an AFLW team based out of Darwin for various reasons. So they had half their players from Northern Territory living in Darwin and half living in Adelaide, and they met up once a week to go and play games. It was just weird, and they won the premiership doing that. So that Northern Territory source of players is quite proportionate in the AFLW. They have far more players from up there than the AFL men. So now we've got a few of those players, and they're spread around the rest of the league. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, we've still got 2 more spots we can fill before the draft, which will bring us to, so we've got 20 out of 22 possible players So look for a couple more announcements in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned the Darwin connection there, and strong rumours surfacing that the Suns will have like an academy zone for Darwin next year, or as early as next year, through the sort of draft concessions that we're looking to try to get for building the club. So very strong links that the club's building there, which sort of justify that concession. Moving on, let's discuss the injury list. Now, with the exception of the Jared Witts knock that he suffered during the game, apparently he's all fine and should be right to play. We don't have any new injuries, so that's a relief to report for once. And the only player that looks like coming back, though, is Young. Oh, what's his first name? I can't remember his name.
Aaron Young.
Aaron Young, that's right. So Aaron Young is a test. If he plays, you can pretty much guarantee he'll line up for the Neefel side, who had the bye this week.
But the Neefel team will really need an injection of players because this is the do or die this week against Brisbane, who are undefeated in the Neefel. So welcome back, Azza. He's going to be going up against some pretty stiff opposition, but we'll get more into that more into depth into how that's sort of looking. But unfortunately, Mitch Riordan and Callum Archie are still 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And they were last week sort of 2 to 3. So
they're not going to get up for this season, are they? I mean, we've got 2-3 games left for the season, and you'd think they'd have to have at least a week in match fitness before they can qualify or be selected in the AFL side. There's no way I can see these two, Mitch Riordan or who was the other name?
Kalachi.
There's no way I can see these guys slotting in before the end of the season. So basically, the injury list that you see now, with the exception of Aaron Young, that's pretty much our injury list for the season. And that's quite an extensive list. We've got Crossley, Rankin. Help me out, Tom. Have you got the list there?
Well, those two are TBA. So we don't think Rankin's going to play. There's no pressure on him to play, but he could come good this week. I mean, it would be amazing for him to actually play a few games in the Neefel because, as I said, it's come to that point at the end of the season, and we've only got one. Well, no, there's 2 ways. Anyway, I'll talk about it later. And Braden Crossley, obviously, when it comes to personal leave, you don't want to be too invasive, and you can't really put a timeline on that. These days, those things are managed as well as they're managed. He'll he's a big personality. He'll come out and talk about what's going on. So, and potentially there's injury involved there. They don't have to tell us. If they do tell us the reason why a player's missing, then that's a bit of a bonus for us, really. It's kind of just fan service. And because obviously they don't want to give the opposition too much information about which knee it is or which this or that or whatever. And then we've got our 7 players who've been put on ice for the whole season, and I'll quickly go through them. Powell, Holman, Hompsch, Brodie, Collins, Wigg, and Thompson. And didn't we miss Rory Thompson on the weekend?
Yeah, we did, but hang on. Yeah, let's jump into the Collingwood game, and we'll discuss that as we go through it, because it's quite an important discussion topic. Okay, so the Suns lost to Collingwood by 69 points. Anyone that didn't tune in to watch the game, you didn't miss too much. Gold Coast kicked 8 goals, 351, 3 goals from Sexton and 3 goals from King. Now, I think I was dragged out to the grocery shopping with the missus, so by the time I got back to watch the football, I jumped on the KO Sports and was watching on delay by about half hour, 40 minutes, and I refused to look at the scores. I'll just watch the game. It's more fun if I don't know the score. And it got off to a fantastic start. Gold Coast kicked the first 2 goals of the first quarter, and they were looking really damaging. They were winning the midfield clearance. They were getting it quickly into the forward line, and our forwards were leading, providing a contest and executing. Sam Day kicked a beautiful goal from around the 50 mark on a 45-degree angle, and it looked like everything was coming together for the Suns to cause that upset that we did against Sydney last year. Now, I mean, the Suns brought it physically in that first quarter to Collingwood, and I think that put Collingwood off a bit. But after that, Tom, it was pretty much one way all to Collingwood. Now, I'm not going to jump on the umpire bandwagon, but you do agree that there were some very contentious decisions.
There were, and it's becoming a bit of a theme. But I mean, look, 2 days after the game, I went back and had a bit of a look at it again last night, and it was there, but it wasn't there as much as it was when I was watching it live, because you just get ticked off, when you're watching it live, and you think you've seen something, and then you watch it again, and there probably wasn't anything there. They're only human, the old umpies, but yeah, Collingwood had a pretty one-way crowd, so yeah, that does influence the umpire's decisions, doesn't it? It
does. So after about the first 10, 15 minutes of that first quarter, Collingwood started to gain the ascendancy. You could see they were starting to win the midfield battle. They were getting a bit more contested, and their small forwards looked really damaging. I think that's a big issue for Gold Coast. Harbrow isn't capable of locking down on a small target, and without Joyce in the side, who would normally perform that role, we don't really have anyone else capable of doing that. And it showed with Jamie Elliott just clearly outclassing Harbrow and getting on top of us. And it wasn't just Jamie Elliott, it was Will Hoskin-Elliott as well. And basically any small forward for Collingwood was doing damage. Their midfielders were going forward and doing damage. And going into the game, we were probably thinking, why aren't we playing a Caleb Graham or a Jack Leslie to replace Homsch and be that tall key defender to line up on Mason Cox? But in the end, the match committee probably went down the right path with not playing another tall. It seems like we were lacking too much speed already. What do you put that down to, Tom? Do you think that was a balance of not having enough defensive-minded defenders? Or
yeah, I think it's that, but I also think, look, Ballard, Lukosius and Dawson all had their best ever games and still got on the end of hiding. Harbrow tried hard. I don't see him as a lockdown defender. Do you?
No. Harbrow's always been that rebounding dash, like the Adam Sard sort of style. Take the game on, try to zigzag past the opponents and get the ball moving. Harbrow isn't a lockdown defender. I don't understand why they persist with this.
Well, they've done it with Eddie Betts twice this year, and
it hasn't worked
both times. No, I mean, I understand why he wants to take it. He wants to do it, and he's putting his hand up, and no one's going to tell him no. But yeah, no, he's just way better spoiling and being third man in, and he can take for a short little bloke. He can take a high mark, and he's really good at getting out of tricky situations. And he's a team player. He'll link up with other players. So he didn't have a bad game, but yeah, he just got embarrassed in the one-on-ones. And if he's our best defender, well, that's why we're getting flogged.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you've mentioned,
but I was really impressed with Dawson. Like he's in my votes.
Okay, well, just on Dawson, you've seen a lot of Dawson in the NEFL. Now he's traditionally been an inside midfielder, and this year he's been moved down to more of a defender. Do you think Dawson has the ability to be a defensively minded defender?
I do, and because I've seen it time and time again, but I will add this caveat: the NEFL defence is always three giants, and he gets in behind them, and he links up very well with his halfback flankers, and they are playing. The NEFL team are playing the game plan better than the AFL team because NEFL opposition don't get back across. They don't chase hard enough, and they don't switch. So the NEFL team with Dawson in behind there, he'll take a mark and he'll take 20 marks in a game, and he'll switch it out. And the game, and of course they're also playing on fields that sort of are narrower at the goal end that don't really have a deep pocket. So it's actually not that far to get from one side of the 50 arc back through the goal square and then out to the wing. And with a guy like Jordan Murdoch tearing off down the wing and taking a few bounces, it's lovely footy. And it leads to wins, leads to big wins. So that's why he's come in, because he's come in from a team that's actually been in pretty damn good form. Like, they're one of the form teams of the NEFL, and they're almost odds on to miss out on the finals because of the injury toll. So yeah, Dawson he's 19, so you could chuck him in the middle and he'd go all right. But I think he's realised that his AFL career is going to be as a defender. And in this team, there's probably a spot for him at the moment because, as you say, there really aren't that many players. I mean, we picked our named backline was Jack Martin and Lockie Weller in the backline, and they haven't been permanent fixtures back there. And I didn't think that Weller was all that good, and Jack Martin had one of his worst games ever. So that's not a solution. But Dawson will stay there.
Well, that's what you've been saying. Dawson certainly does have a chance to cement himself as the Gold Coast Suns lockdown small defender. I've got doubts about whether he's defensively minded enough to do that, but he does have a few things going for him. He's got a bit of pace, he can bloody tackle, and he uses the ball well. Now, he's got to knock out, at the moment he doesn't have too much opposition. He's got to knock out basically Jesse Joyce. Jesse Joyce has been the Suns' lockdown small defender for the last couple of years, and let's face it, he's got a couple of knocks on him, Joyce, and Dawson may have the ability to just go past him a bit. As far as Harbrow, I mean, pretty much everyone in the AFL realises Harbrow is a rebounding defender, and that's how he should be used. Now, you also mentioned Lukosius and Ballard. Now, they had great games, and they were sort of alternating between the centre-half back sort of position and a third tall sort of intercepting defender, and that's why they were both really good. And as you said as well with Dawson, the use of the ball and the changing the angles, the switch, all three of those boys were doing it, and it was very obvious that the Suns were doing it. And I mean, it's obviously not great to be predictable to the opponent, but it was great from a Suns fan to see these boys, this team, taking the game on a bit, switching up the angles, and trying to find a way through Collingwood's defensive structures.
Yeah, absolutely, and not to mention the ball in the air, they won that contest in the back line there. It's just that if the other team can win 20% of the contested marks in the forward 50, then your defenders are going to look stupid. So, those guys took 50. So, Lukosius, Harbrow, Dawson and Ballard took 59 marks between them. I mean, am I counting that right? No, I'm not. 49 marks between them.
Well, Ballard and Dawson had around 30 marks apiece. So, yeah, I can totally see that happening. They were all quite good, but then again, the ball spent a lot of time down there. Now, the other thing was when Collingwood did step up, the one thing that stood out was how quick they were. And that's because they got the ball, they basically turned and played on at all costs. It really highlighted just how slow our Suns side is. The Suns players just couldn't keep up with them. As soon as the ball was turned over, not even when the ball was turned over, I thought the Suns were pretty good compared to previous weeks at maintaining possession of the ball and hitting the targets. But as soon as it went to a one-on-one contest or the ball was turned over from a contest, Collingwood were just too slick with their hands, used the ball too skillfully, and were just able to cut Gold Coast up right through the middle.
Yeah, I mean, look, I totally agree with you about the slow part. but it's not like we haven't got fast players. I mean, Tuke Miller is electric over 20 to 30 metres. You've seen Darcy McPherson bouncing around through the centre square and just really showing that that's his role. I'd like to see McPherson spend more time up forward because I think he's a definite goal threat and has that pace to get us from the centre to the inside 50s by foot, by those short passes because they've run through the middle or they've run through the sort of the inside wing. We were getting smashed every time we tried to go up the sideline, and that's supposed to be the safe option with Witsy, but with Grundy and Miacek and just their Collingwood's ability to bring that ball down from the contest and just send it straight back through over the Suns defenders' heads. They kept doing it, and we didn't have an answer.
No, we didn't, and it really showed. Like, there are some big holes for the Suns, and we'll get into that later on. We'll try and talk about the recruits the Suns should target, and at the same time, who we think the Suns need to target. All right, let's finish off with our votes for this game. I've given one vote to Lukosius. I thought he did play one of his best games, and he led the Suns with metres gained. He had 449 metres gained from 21 disposals.
Yeah, no, he ran and he marked everything that came his way. He had 7 rebound 50s. He was very good. The 1%ers is where you when you've got a play, when you've got a list of players out like we do, like Collins and Hompsch and Thompson, you look for who's going to get the 1%ers in defence, and Lukosius got 4 of those. Mind you, they spread it around. A lot of 1%ers in there, so there's any desperation going on. Look, for 1 point, I went in a slightly different direction. I had Jacob Dawson, who I mentioned I thought was one of the better players. 14 marks, a couple of them contested. He knows where the drop of the ball's going to be. He's really good at sighting that, which just suggests that he could evolve into that defender we're talking about. I think you're quite right. He doesn't quite have that. Like Jesse Joyce seems to just have that fire burning, and he knows that his role is defensive, and he's very coachable, follows his orders. But again, we're talking about a bunch of teenagers playing in defence for us.
Yeah, my 2 votes went to Charlie Ballard, so the Suns player of the round. 22 disposals at 86% efficiency and the 15 marks. He was pretty crucial in setting us up from the back half and cutting off Collingwood's foray into the attack.
Yeah, 8 rebound 50s and 5 1%ers. I had Jack Lukosius at number 2, we already talked about, and for 3 votes I had Ballard. The only thing that separated Lukosius and Ballard, to my mind, was Jack. His disposal efficiency wasn't quite as good as Charlie Ballard, but you got to remember, last year, the year 2018, of all players who played a minimum of 10 games, Charlie Ballard had the worst disposal efficiency by foot in the entire AFL. So he's fixed that aspect of his game to my mind. He's fixed that aspect, which was the knock on him that saw him slide to the 3rd round where we picked him up in the draft. So, he was the player of the round.
Yeah, and I think that all comes down to a confidence thing with Ballard. He's found his spot. He feels comfortable knowing what he's doing, and he can just relax, take it on board, and do what needs to be done. My 3 votes.
He beat Cox. You got to say, for half a game, he kept Cox very bloody quiet.
Yeah. And my 3 votes, a bit left field here, but I can't ignore the hard work, the pressure acts, the tackles that Tuke Miller gives. 26 disposals, 85% disposal efficiency. He had 21 pressure acts. I think he had about 9 contested possessions, about 8 tackles. Tuke Miller just keeps providing that defence and aggression. A little bit of aggression there in your street, Tom.
They like to use it as a shortcut. the Ipswich Road leading down to the Gabba. It's always full of people. It used to be able to shoot a cannon down the middle of it and not even be in danger of hitting anything. But these days it's like the freeway. Anyway, I think that was just an Uber motorbike.
So Tuke Miller was my three votes.
I was going to go down the Tuke road. I think he's back. The only thing that kept him out of my votes was the other guys in the old fantasy points. The other guys all got a little bit higher than him, and I sort of thought, on balance, yeah, he was fourth. And an honourable mention goes to little Milesy. He's bloody dreadful by foot, but everything else he does is rolled gold. So,
well, that's the thing with fantasy points. Okay, I'll take you to school here for a little bit. I'll be the teacher.
Good. Well, that's your bag.
Yeah, I used to do the whole fantasy Supercoach thing pretty hardcore a few years back. Now, the fantasy points is just about getting stats, about getting possessions, and players don't get penalised too much for making errors or mistakes. Now, Supercoach, on the other hand, does. It also rewards players for being at the right place at the right time and scoring a goal when it's counted. When scores are tight, goals and possessions and the hard work that's done then counts a lot more than when it's game over and the game was decided 20 minutes ago. So always if you're going to use those sort of points as a guide to how well a player's played, Supercoach is probably the better judge of that, as it rates the players that have changed the game when the game needed to be changed.
Yeah, no, I was aware of that, but you're quite right. But as I said, I was just looking for something to fit 4 into 3.
All right.
That was my deciding factor. Tuke had a great game.
Well, hopefully Tuke plays against Zorko this week in the Q Clash. Always a big fan. What do you mean?
It's off the rivalry between the Suns and the Lions. He's going to have to go without a Zorko Miller matchup because Zorko's chickened out.
What do you mean?
Not playing.
Has this just come through?
They're saying he's done a hamstring, but as we well know, hamstrings are usually 4 or 5 weeks minimum, and they're saying he's done a hamstring for maybe a week or 2. And it's just convenient for Dane. He put his cue in the rack, and he's sooking it. He's going to be sitting sitting in a little 3-piece suit up in the grandstand, and yeah, I don't believe it for a minute. I think he's scared.
Your good mate Michael Whiting wrote 6 hours ago that he's still a chance to face the Suns.
Really? Because they've been saying he's no chance. But anyway, that's interesting.
I'd love to see Zorko line up, even if he is a little bit underdone. It will just make the Tuke clash a bit more exciting. Because I don't think Tuke would go easy on him either way.
No, he'd be belting the crap out of him the whole game. It's the main thing that I was looking forward to. And then I watched the late game on Sunday, and off hops Zorko, complaining that he's done a little twang in his little hammy region. And they were all saying he's gone for weeks. But anyway, we'll see.
Well, hopefully the Suns give us something to look forward to with the Q Clash. I'm probably going to make the trip up to Brisbane. Not a fan of going up there, but to support the boys and witness a Q Clash and hopefully an epic upset would be amazing and rub it in all those Brisbaneites' faces. Okay, let's head on to the topic of the week. The priority pick discussion is coming to the forefront again in the AFL media. Now, we've got flogs on Triple M, such as James Brayshaw and his compatriots there, basically saying it's a disgrace that the Suns should get a priority pick in at the start of the first round because apparently the clubs run the club into the ground. What I think James Brayshaw fails to realise is pretty much no one is there from the start of the club. So it's a whole new generation, a whole new group of people, and the club's in the right hands now to move up and to grow the talent and build this club. Now, he's in his little fairy tale world. I think he's still chairman of North Melbourne the way he carries on.
Do you know who he is? He's an ex-cricket player, and he couldn't even make it into the Test team. He just played for the Western Australian. I mean, I think we'd all probably like to represent our state at some level of sport, and good on you. But he's not even he's a nothing.
No, as a football, that's generally what happens with these media commentators, Tom. They generally are, not good enough to make it as elite sportsmen, so they talk about sport instead. That's what happens with a lot of industries. This particular rant that he's gone on. Look, there's a reason that the footy show was cancelled, and it's because morons like him go on about crap like that. It's really they're just going for ratings in a pretty competitive radio market in Melbourne. But to be honest, they're getting flogged. They're getting absolutely blown out of the water by SEN and other radio networks who've got way better commentators who have actually talking about the topic of the day. I mean, if you want to get an opinion on the Suns as far as should they or shouldn't they get the priority pick. Even people who I don't usually agree with, like Wayne Carey, are saying, yeah, of course, that's just the first thing they should do. There's plenty of other things that need to be looked at and implemented in addition. Yeah, I mean, Caroline Wilson has, Monday night, last night, was on her show, I think it's Footy Classified, talking about the priority pick and how the Suns need it. Obviously, I think there was other members on that panel, Chris Judd being one of them, against this. Now, the key thing that these people have that against the priority pick, they're affiliated with another football club. Of course, they don't want the Suns to get a priority pick. Mind you, I don't quite fully understand how James Brayshaw likes to carry on about how Brisbane's had the best draw in history and the competition's not equal, and yet it's okay for the draft to be completely untouched and be equal when it's the only mechanism designed to allow clubs at the bottom of the ladder to become competitive.
Well, I mean, that statement just shows his ignorance anyway, because the Lions came bottom four. If you come bottom four, you're going to get a good draw. But, Brisbane's draw is fairly similar to the Suns' draw, and our draw hasn't been easy by any stretch. If Brisbane's draw was easier, you could be argued that their draw was easier because they get us twice.
Well, that was the other argument. They're complaining about Adelaide potentially playing finals because they had the privilege of playing Gold Coast twice for a nice little percentage boost.
But Adelaide always gets an easy draw. You must know that. I mean, that Adelaide's had the easiest 25 years of any AFL side as far as draws, because they've got 12 games at home, and of their other 10 games, they're often playing teams like the Gold Coast twice. It's not by design. It's just that's the reality. They have two showdowns in Adelaide because it's like a blockbuster. If the Suns could get 12 games at Metricon, it'd be bloody good.
Well, I mean, at one point we had 13 games in Queensland, didn't we? We had the 11 home games, so we had the Q Clash in Brisbane, and on top of that, we'd managed to convince Richmond and the Bulldogs to sell games to Cairns. So at one point the Suns were lucky enough to have 13 games in Queensland. But there's obviously inequalities in the draw in the competition, but one thing that shouldn't be equal is the draft. Now, the draft should be altered to reflect that it assists the teams struggling at the bottom of the ladder, because we're in an age now with free agency, and free agency history shows teams in the 8 are more likely to receive a free agent than teams outside the 8.
Yeah, yep. absolutely. And the Melbourne teams always get it all spooned to them. If you remember the headlines from 10 years ago, or probably a bit more than 10 years ago, they were saying that the non-Victorian teams were being, handed all the premierships on a platter. I mean, at that stage, West Coast had a few. Sydney had won their first flag in forever. Brisbane had a few. Adelaide had a couple. The only non-Victorian team that at that time hadn't won the flag was Freo, and they were up and about. And the Victorian teams were all languishing at the bottom of the table, and most of them were missing the eight. So there was one year where every non-Victorian team made the final eight, and it was only Collingwood and Essendon, who both had very good teams in the early 2000s. And then all of the things that were perceived by the James Brayshaws and Eddie Maguires of the world were all taken away. So Kohler got taken away. But you know what? Brisbane lost Kohler, and Gold Coast, for no reason that anyone can justify, lost the Kohler, the extra payments, and Sydney and GWS got to keep theirs for an extra few seasons to the tune of $3 million more than what the Suns were able to spend in that period of time. So I can kind of see what they're talking about, but it's misdirected when they're talking about the Suns. We didn't get anything like what GWS got. The things that they say we got. What did I hear the other day? It was a quote from what's his face, Gerard Healy, and he said the Suns were given the world when they started out and messed it up. And I was like, how could you even say that? Like they gave what they gave to the Suns to set up, and it didn't work. And they gave heaps more to the Giants, and it did work. It was almost like they were trying to work out how can you build a new club. If you're going to build a new club in Tasmania and maybe in 10 years put one in Darwin, how can you do it as cheaply as possible, or do you need to put heaps into it? Let's do it completely differently and see which one works. Because if we can do it with less, then that'll be cheaper down the long run. But if we have to spend more, we'll see how we go with giving the GWS the world and giving the Suns bugger all.
Yeah, I feel like we're going down this tired old path of Giants gets more than the Suns, and they've screwed up big time. So let's move on from here. I mean, it was pretty disgraceful, the comments that James Brayshaw said and the other team of that Triple M Saturday Rub crew. If you haven't heard it, I'm sure you can find it, but it's pretty bloody disgraceful, and I've known quite a few Suns fans have gone to social media to voice their anger towards those people. Let's move on to the off-season, the trade period. We talked a bit last week about the recruits the Suns could look at. Granted, we only got about 2 minutes to discuss it. Now we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, so let's jump into that. Now, we discussed that the Suns, first of all, everyone's looking for the Suns to have a Luke Hodge 2.0 type character, but is that really what the Suns need?
I've been thinking about this one and who we could actually recruit who could do that. So the one who's been in the spotlight this weekend, and a lot more so than last week, is Sean Burgoyne. Let's forget how old he is, because he still plays very good footy. Do you think Burgoyne would be somebody who could provide that Burgoyne and Harbrow with some A grade talls like Tom? I think Thompson's an A grade defender, and Collins is certainly a good rebounder, and Jack Homsch is pretty tough. Put those guys in there with Burgoyne. What do you reckon?
Look, first of all, let me start off by saying there is no such thing as Hodge 2.0. That player does not currently exist in the AFL. So we're not going to get anyone to the calibre of that. Now, I think Burgoyne is up there with one of the players that could provide a boost of culture, of skill in the team, as well as professionalism. So I'm not against Burgoyne coming to the club. I also think Burgoyne's flexible enough to play forward or play on the wing. Then, instead of just being stuck down back. The other players on that list, we've got Richard Douglas from Adelaide. He's quite capable of being a damaging small forward and can also run through the midfield.
Yeah.
Josh Kennedy from Sydney. Now, I know he's a bit younger, but if we were able to pry him from Sydney, he's the sort of player you could actually stick right in the guts and say, do your thing, and others will follow. So I'm really keen on Josh Kennedy, but again, that's a bit of a pipe dream. I don't think that can happen. Jared Roughhead seems less and less likely, but he could be someone that even playing NEFL could really provide some sort of teaching to our key forwards. But the Suns have made moves this year to get Justin Kosicki in as a part-timer, and I think in the last month we've started to see some real changes with the Suns' tall forwards, the way they're leading and the way they're taking contested marks. I think we're already starting to see the benefits of having a part-time forwards coach like Justin Kosicki.
And if that is Cozzy causing that, if Ben King comes out and in round 23 and says, just want to thank my line coach Justin Kosicki, he's done. Kosicki, he's done wonders for me. Then I'll be very happy. It's not really the kind of thing that unless you're super close to the club that you can really tell. But that's been certainly what we've been led to believe is that the forward line have been benefiting from a bit of extra mentoring from him. I think earlier in the year they sort of brought Alistair Lynch and Jonathan Brown through the facilities and they had a kick around or whatever. But the media tried to sort of suggest that there was a bit of mentorship going on there, but there wasn't. And they did. It was obvious that they needed to have somebody like Cozzy come in. So I'd prefer that really. I'd prefer Cozzy to continue with that rather than Roughhead. A lot of these older players have families too, Shane. So if there's some sort of family connection, then I think players will come. I want to put out there a bit of a dark horse. Carl Amon from Port Adelaide. He's an Indigenous player, and his Indigenous family are based in Queensland. So he could potentially be someone who could play that sort of small forward role, and potentially sort of be a stable mate for Rankin. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, Carl Amon's certainly got a lot of talent, and he's not a best 22 walk-up start for Port Adelaide. So I can quite easily see him coming up to the Suns and having a shot at trying to be best 22 up here. The player the Suns have been linked to is Stephen Hill. Now, that's been going on for about 3 months. Now, he's probably one of the other players you could probably put into that category of senior leadership. I'm not sure if Stephen Hill has that leadership. I haven't seen enough of him at Fremantle to suggest that. But he's certainly the sort of player that could play a role on game day, filling one of the Suns' needs, which would be a pacey sort of wingman. Now, Hills hasn't had the best with injury, but he can play that wingman role, and really salute for the Suns.
I mean, yeah, look, he knows how to find a goal too. 200 gamer, so there's certainly a lot of experience there to bring to the group. You'd imagine he'd be sort of looking for a 2 or 3 year deal, so that could be, it could be a worry. Question marks over him are his injury run. He'll be 30 this time next year. That doesn't mean anything really. If he can get his body right and play another 5-6 years, you wouldn't be surprised at all.
No.
Package him up with Brad Hill.
Oh, I think that's a bit of a pipe dream. Anyway, Tom, it's time for us to go. That's our senior player chat. We'll discuss next week the under the 20-odd year players that could come in and have an impact. Until then, go Suns.
Go Neat.